October 7th, 1571, the waters of the Gulf of Patras roared with cannon fire, splintering wood, and the cries of thousands. On this day, two worlds clashed. The mighty Ottoman Empire, expanding endlessly across 3 continents, faced the united fleets of Christian Europe in a single battle that would decide the fate of the Mediterranean. This was the Battle of Lepanto, one of the largest naval engagements in history, and the last great battle fought with galleys, rowed by hand across blood-red seas. The 16th century was a time of empires. The Ottomans under Sultan Selim II commanded vast territories, from the deserts of Arabia to the gates of Vienna. To the west, Catholic Europe struggled with division, Protestant Reformation, political rivalries, and the rise of new world powers left the Mediterranean vulnerable. Yet despite their disunity, one cause would force Europe to unite: the Ottoman push into the Mediterranean seas. The Ottomans had already conquered Cyprus earlier in 1571, brutally executing Venetian defenders and enslaving thousands. Their fleet roamed the Mediterranean unchecked, threatening Venice, Spain, and Rome itself. For Christendom, this was a terrifying prospect. If unchecked, the Ottomans would dominate the seas, and perhaps one day Europe itself. Pope Pius V recognized the danger. In a rare moment of unity, Catholic powers set aside differences to face a common enemy. The Holy League was formed, an alliance of Spain, Venice, Genoa, and the Papal States. At its head stood Don John of Austria, the half-brother of Spain's King Philip II. Charismatic and only 24 years old, Don John was tasked with commanding the largest Christian fleet assembled in centuries. This alliance was no small feat. Venice, a maritime power, brought ships and experience. Spain provided soldiers and wealth. The Papal States offered spiritual authority and resources. For a fractured Europe, the Holy League was a desperate but powerful gamble. On the other side stood the Ottoman fleet, commanded by Ali Pasha, the Sultan's trusted admiral. With more than 250 war galleys, thousands of seasoned sailors, and tens of thousands of soldiers, the Ottoman navy was feared across the world. For decades, Ottoman corsairs like Barbarossa and Dragut had terrorized European coasts. Their empire's naval tradition was unmatched in speed, maneuverability, and ferocity. To the Ottomans, Lepanto was not just a battle. It was an opportunity to crush Christian resistance once and for all, securing dominance over the Mediterranean and ensuring their expansion westward. The Holy League gathered about 212 ships, fewer than the Ottomans but with crucial advantages. Their galleys were sturdier, their artillery heavier. Many of their ships carried arquebusiers, early gunpowder infantry, and cannons capable of devastating broadsides. Most importantly, they had the galley known as the Real, Don John's flagship, a floating fortress armed to the teeth. As the fleets assembled near the Gulf of Patras, tension mounted. Soldiers prayed, priests gave blessings, and men prepared for either glory or death. The sea would soon run red. October 7th dawned bright and calm. The two fleets spotted each other across the narrow waters near Lepanto, modern-day Naupactos in Greece. Don John arranged his fleet into a crescent-shaped line. On his left flank, Venetian Admiral Agostino Barbarigo. On the right, the experienced Genoese commander Andrea Doria. In the center, Don John himself with the papal flagship close by. Facing them, Ali Pasha mirrored the formation. His center, strong with his own flagship, the Sultana. On the Ottoman right, Mehmed Sirocco commanded. On the left, Uluj Ali, a cunning corsair known for his ruthlessness. The stage was set. The battle began with a thunderous exchange of cannon fire. Smoke filled the air. As the fleets collided, galleys rammed into each other, grappling hooks locked ships together, and soldiers poured across decks in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Muskets cracked, arrows rained, and swords clashed. On the Holy League's left, Barbarigo faced Sirocco's fierce assault. The Venetians fought desperately, their galleys pressed hard. Barbarigo himself was struck by an arrow, mortally wounded, but his men held the line. In the center, the most decisive clash occurred. Don John's flagship Real locked against Ali Pasha's Sultana. For hours, the two flagships fought, surrounded by a storm of blood and steel. Soldiers swarmed the decks, and the battle turned into a massacre. Finally, Christian soldiers stormed the Sultana, killed Ali Pasha, and hoisted his severed head as a symbol of victory. On the Holy League's right flank, Andrea Doria faced Uluj Ali. The cunning corsair tried to outmaneuver the Christian fleet, but Doria held firm, preventing a collapse. Slowly, the tide of battle shifted. With Ali Pasha dead, Ottoman morale faltered. The Christian fleet pressed forward, surrounding their enemy. By late afternoon, the Ottoman fleet was shattered. The battle was over. More than 200 Ottoman galleys were destroyed or captured. Tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers and sailors lay dead or captured. The Holy League lost about 7,500 men, but the victory was absolute. The Mediterranean, for the first time in a century, was free from the fear of Ottoman naval supremacy. The victory was celebrated across Europe as a miracle. Bells rang in Rome. Paintings, songs, and poems immortalized the triumph. The Spanish writer Miguel de Cervantes, author of Don Quixote, fought at Lepanto and was wounded, losing the use of his left hand. He later called it the most noble and memorable event that past centuries have seen. Yet despite the crushing loss, the Ottomans were far from defeated. Within a year, they rebuilt their fleet. Still, the myth of Ottoman naval invincibility was broken forever. Europe had proven it could unite against a common enemy. The Battle of Lepanto marked the end of an era. It was the last great clash of galleys, soon to be replaced by larger sailing ships with heavier artillery. It symbolized the peak of Christian resistance against Ottoman expansion and gave Europe breathing space in its long struggle for survival. Even centuries later, the echoes of Lepanto remain. It was not just a naval battle, but a turning point, a clash of civilizations, faiths, and empires that shaped the future of the Mediterranean world. The Battle of Lepanto was more than a victory. It was a reminder of what unity could achieve in the face of overwhelming odds. In the smoke, fire, and sacrifice of October 7, 1571, history was written upon the waves. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into history's defining battles, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us as we bring the past to life, one story at a time. This is History Replay This Day.